I've shared this before, but I'm going to share it one more time. While Jesus was on the cross in Matthew's Gospel, verse 46, he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And according to Matthew, that was the only thing that he said while on the cross. And in Mark 15, while Jesus was dying on the cross, verse 34, he says the same thing. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? In Luke's Gospel, while on the cross, he says, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming, in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. Then they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and the hills cover us. For if they do these things in green trees, what shall be done in the dry? So he's prophesying here to Israel. And in verse 34, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in verse 43, he says, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. And in verse 46, he says, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And in John's Gospel, he says to his mother, Woman, behold thy son. And he says to John, Behold thy mother. This is John 19, verses 26 and 27. And in verse 28, he says, I thirst. And in verse 30, he says, It is finished. In Matthew's Gospel, which is for the Jews are going to feel betrayed. They're going to feel forsaken. Mark, which is for the lukewarm, they are going to feel forsaken. But not the bride. The bride has tried to warn Israel and has tried to warn the lukewarm. There's coming a day where you will weep for yourselves. And Jesus says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Jesus tells us later on in the bride's gospel, Verily I say to you, this day you will be with me in paradise. And in verse 46, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And when we see the Gospel of John, we understand it is for the world. So when he speaks to his mother, who represents Israel, he says to her, Behold, thy son, John, the beloved, represents grace. Maybe more proof for the two witnesses? Possibly. We also see that in John's gospel, which is for the world, that is when he says, "It is finished." We also see in John's gospel, not in the other gospels, but in the gospel for the world, in John 18, verse 11, he tells Peter, "Put up thy sword into its sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it?" And he's speaking of the cup of wrath. Jesus knew the mission. He knew the end from the beginning. And he knew what the plan was. And he's telling his bride that if we will pour out ourselves throughout Scripture and ask him these questions and seek his face, he will reveal it to us, because John 15 says that we are not his servants, but we are his friends. And he tells his friends everything, because everything was told of him from the Father. The world will suffer wrath. And I want you to remember this part about Mary representing Israel, and how grace is represented here as well. I've got another video the Lord has given me, and I'll share it later on. The Lord allows. Everything is coming together perfectly. I feel this sense of urgency